Hello and welcome back to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show, the show where we go through all 20 games that happened at the weekend down in the Spanish third tier. And as always, I am delighted to be joined by my co-host, Liam Bambridge. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, not so bad. You said, I think earlier on in the week that you needed to get back to Spain to watch some more football, and I felt exactly the same way. And then I realised I was there about 10 days ago, so I can't really complain. But yeah, never get enough, can you? Really, I love watching live football. I love talking about all 20 games with you every week, but nothing beats actually being there, does it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. January, I am hoping for something. I did have my eye on a trip to Europa, obviously knowing that New Sardinia is due to be, and I say due to be, Liam, ending being played there at the end of the month due to the artificial turf. As we know, we've covered it many, many times. However, just a bit of news this week that actually there might be an injunction in place, Liam, that may allow Europa to continue playing at their home stadium beyond the end of January. What a massive opportunity that would be for the club from Barcelona, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, given how brilliant they've been on their own patch, yeah, of course, it'd be something they're going to push for. And it's not just about it; it's about being a club that's at the heart of the local community. And although they wouldn't have to move too far away to play on grass, it's not ideal. As I think it's got an athletics track around it. It's not their home. They're only playing there because they've got to, because it's got a grass surface. So it'll be very interesting, that one. I still don't hold up too much hope for them, because I would think that. It's a case of opening the floodgates, isn't it? If you do allow them to do that, but maybe they feel they have a strong case. They've looked into it legally, and will feel that they, are well armed to take on the RFEF. But I'm not too confident success from their point of view.
Yeah, I think the feeling coming out of, so this has been reported in local media in Barcelona, and they're saying that with precedents that have been set elsewhere, the accessibility of artificial turfs in things like elite women's football, in European football, in Scandinavian countries, etc., means that this actually shouldn't be a barrier to any club playing professionally, is I think what they're aiming for. And I think in some corridors they are really, really quite confident about pulling this off, really, which, like you say, will be interesting for knock-on effects for people like Ourense to Getcho, for example. They obviously are, looking to leave Gorbella for a new ground in the new year. So it's I watch that kind of space, but it's as you've mentioned, Liam, Europa at home this season haven't tasted defeat. It is a proper fortress for them, which means they sit second in the league. So it'll be very, very interesting to see whether they can get that across the line. And more importantly, it means that we get to visit, or more opportunities to visit as well, because for me, it is a guaranteed 15 points if they get to stay at home in the second half of the season.
I would disagree. I think the problem is that, if we look at it, we look at Europa doing very well at home. We look at Unionistas doing very well at home. And unfortunately, that kind of lends itself to the argument, doesn't it, that it's not fair? Because one of the reasons why they're doing so well is because they're playing on artificial turf and teams aren't as used to that. I'm not sure I buy that. I think a lot of teams do train on 4G, don't they? So it's not a massive difference. But, in terms of a level playing field, I can see where the argument is, well, everyone else plays on grass, so why should they be allowed to have an exception made for them? And of course, you have, as we've said many times before, got teams like Unionistas and Tarazona that spend large sums of money for clubs of their size, putting down grass pitches, tearing up their 4G pitches, and I would expect that they would want some remuneration for that if it is now going to be allowed after all. So yeah, it's a very tricky one, and we will know, I suppose, in the next 6 weeks or so whether the Europa have been successful.
Yeah, and be very interesting as well. Should obviously Europa take advantage of that and end up, what they're all here to do is be promoted to the Spanish Segunda. Can they play in the Spanish Segunda with artificial turf, or do we go back to square one with that? I don't know. Obviously, I think the finances might make it a bit more palatable to come up with a solution. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting 6 weeks, like you say, Liam. On the managerial merry-go-round front, we are well into seasonal changes. I know we follow a lot of football teams and football clubs that we know like to change managers. We are 12 down out of 40 now, Liam. This is, actually, no, 13, including the Sevilla Atletico manager who obviously left of his own accord. That's a great turnaround in managers. Today, Diego Nogales became that 12th manager to be sacked. relieved of his duties, and was almost instantly replaced by Argentine manager Alejandro Sandroni, formerly of Intercity, formerly of Linares Deportivo, and formerly of...
Yeah, indeed, formerly of Yaclana Deportivo, and I know that when they dispensed with their coach, Ivan Martinez, at the weekend, a lot of people saying, bring in Sandroni. He's still very well thought of in Yaclano, or in Yec, I should say. But clearly he had his eyes on something else. And Nogales, 5 games he lost, I think, didn't he, in November? Was it? I'm not sure if we had 5 games in November. I think we did, didn't we? And the helm of Talavera. He was obviously at Fuenlabrada last season, lost his job there and got the job at Talavera. So it's slightly strange to see the previous coach, Javi Sanchez, move on, and he's down at Algeciras now, isn't he? But that, I suppose, meant that Nogales was a new coach rather than the coach that had brought them up from Segunda RF, and so presumably wasn't going to get given as much time to sort things out, and he's had a really poor month. After a fairly promising start, I think, to the season, Talavera have really fallen off a cliff in the last few weeks, and so he's been ousted, and Sandroni, as you say, is already in the hot seat in his place.
He is, and another 2 men that have taken up their hot seats. One of them up in Ponferradina, Liam. Man, you probably know quite well from your time covering in the Spanish Segunda is Mehdi Nafti. He's obviously managed at this level before, I think, but I think this is maybe a bit of a step or a roll back for him, given that he was, I think it was Leganés and was it Levante recently as well? Was his last couple of jobs?
I don't think he's managed in Primera Federación, but he's been out of the game for a while, hasn't he, since he left Alcorcón. So I suppose if that's a good opportunity doesn't come up, and there's a decent opportunity comes up for you in Primera RF, you're going to take that instead, aren't you?
No, absolutely, and he had quite the introduction as well. Obviously, replacing Estevez with his farewell press conference too, which is a nice touch. You'd think that those kind of things that the club would do. He'd been around for about 10 years, but he'd only been around for about not even 6 months. So it's an interesting
because I find this weird because essentially Estevez came out and sort of said, I feel a bit hard done by to have been sacked, and then laid out the stats. And when you start to listen to what the stats look like, it does feel like a very strange sacking. And I think that there's certainly divided opinion, shall we say. I think there's a lot of hostility towards the people in charge at Ponferradina. And I don't think everyone's particularly happy about this decision. And when you look at the run he was on, okay, so they were just above the relegation zone, and the argument was, of course, that we brought you here to be in the playoffs, and we're not. We're nearer the relegation zone. But how tight these two divisions are. And if you look at his recent record, to be fair, he certainly was doing better over the last 6 or 7 weeks. And he laid that all out in his press conference, which was kind of a little bit uncomfortable, really. He's perfectly entitled to do that, of course. But I find it interesting that this isn't unusual in Spain, is it? They quite often have these farewell press conferences, which kind of gives the outgoing, it's kind of awkward for the outgoing coach to have this, really. And as you say, particularly strange when they haven't been there very long. But it also, as I was listening, I was thinking, hang on a minute, why have they sacked him? Which, of course, was exactly what he wanted everyone to think. But yeah, fairness to him, I think he's a good coach. I think he's unlucky to lose his job here. I know Ponferradina haven't been pulling up too many trees this season, but he is working, as we've said before, with a much lesser able squad, I would suggest, than previous coaches. And I thought he was doing all right, although he wasn't absolutely turning things around, after a poor start to the season. It was certainly heading in the right direction. And I think a lot of Ponferradina fans have said that, we feel like, he was starting to. So it's a tough job for Nafti to come into. He's only been given, I think, to the end of the season as well. So yeah, obviously, if you have been out of the game for quite a long time, you'll probably take what's being offered. And Ponferradina in Primera Federación terms is, one of the bigger clubs. But yeah, it looks like a pretty tough act to follow, which you wouldn't really be saying normally about a coach that's only been there for a few months.
No, absolutely. And I think as well, just trying to recall from a Nafti perspective, his last 2 stints didn't particularly end well. I don't think he saw out a season, did he? Either of the 2 clubs, if I remember rightly. But you may correct me on that. An interesting man down in El Mauli for me, Liam. This is the managerial sort of like intrigue I've been waiting for, because we know that Mike Garlick down there is a what's the word I'm going to look for? He's an interesting owner, isn't he? Obviously, he's not your usual model for a Spanish club. And, he lost Javi Medina in the summer. Obviously brought in the new manager he's since sacked. This time he's gone adjacent to Spain for a new manager, bringing Abraham Paz from St. Joseph's in Gibraltar. he's obviously got quite a bit of experience. Obviously, people might say that Gibraltar League isn't exactly, elite football, but he's had a taste of European football while in the small country. So it's quite an interesting move for me, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought this was quite left field, exactly as you thought. To be honest, I didn't see it coming at all. But yeah, very interesting to see that in terms of comparability here. You're right; it's a very small league in many examples, but they do play in Europe St. Joseph's every year, don't they? Because of that, they still get several teams from the Rock who get to compete at least in the early rounds of the Conference League. So yeah, he has tasted, I wouldn't say the big occasion, but he's certainly got experience of playing against some decent opposition, and it'll be a really interesting test for him to see how he fares with this one. But yeah, interesting to swap European football for Primera RFEF football. But it probably just shows us in terms of levels of financial remuneration that actually he can do as well coming across to a small club in the Spanish third division as he was doing in Gibraltar.
Yeah, we endorse that move as well, by the way. Even like you say, less Conference League, more Primera Federación in my book. Plenty of Primera RF representation in the Copa del Rey fixtures, which have just kicked off at the time of recording between Racing Ferrol and Huesca. I think I just saw that Huesca had taken the lead just before we started. Guadalajara also hosted.
I think Huesca are going to go through if it hasn't quite finished, and I think it's pretty much done.
Yeah. Guadalajara hosting Ceuta, which is a fun game. A really big one for me is Real Murcia against Cadiz, which is potential for a bit of a giant killing there. Eldense against Almeria. The giant killers that are Ourense can probably smell blood against Girona at the moment. Pontevedra against Eibar, Talavera against Malaga, Sabadell against Deportivo La Coruña, Ponferradina against Racing Club de Santander, Cartagena against Valencia, which is another really fun, massive game there, and Tenerife against Granada. Liam, some winnable fixtures there for our third-tier sides, aren't there?
Yeah, I like the look of Tenerife home to Granada. I think Granada probably just got out of the relegation zone this last weekend and probably looking to push up the table. It's very tight in the middle of Segunda as it is in the middle of both grupos in Primera RF. So I'm not sure it'll be massively a priority for them. I think Cartagena perhaps will find Valencia a little bit too tough. It's just difficult to say, as we always say with these cup games, what sort of team are the Segunda side or above going to field. I noticed from the early games this evening that lots of the big sides have made a lot of changes, but all of their top players are on the bench. So they've always got the option to bring on a few of their stars if things aren't going to plan. I think Real Murcia Cadiz, to me, stands out as the one that's most likely to see an upset, just because, again, of priority. I think Real Murcia will go quite strong, and I think Cadiz are not that fussed. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get home in that one. But yeah, let's hope one or two of the Primera Federación sides bloody the noses of their higher ranked opposition.
Yes, and I am definitely backing the team we're about to talk about now in Grupo Uno, Liam, Ourense, to really, as I've said, bloody the nose of Girona. They are, especially after the cup run last year, already knocked out Real Oviedo as well. They are technically the lowest ranked side on paper. I know there are a few Segunda F clubs still in the Copa del Rey that are fighting, but I think just the route they came through, the lowest seed is supposed to what I'm trying to say. However, they'll go into this game absolutely buoyed on the back of a fantastic result at home against Unionistas at the weekend, weren't they?
Yeah, also noticeable that by the end of that game, the pitch was in a right mess. And I'm sure that's not going to help Girona all that much either. I would think that Girona will want to come and play a bit of football. And unless it's been a really, really cloud-free, dry and sunny period since this game was played at the weekend, I suspect it will be another swamp for the La Liga side to negotiate.
Famous in Galicia for that as well, aren't they, Liam? Like I say, it's always, not cloudy, never raining in Galicia, all sunshine in winter.
Yeah, no, I think, certainly tongue in cheek with that particular comment. Although it's quite funny when I was talking to our interviewee last week, Caballo, about, and he was complaining about the weather in Denmark, saying it was always cold and wet. And I was like, you live in Lugo, for goodness sake. You live in Galicia. Oh, but it's different. He was saying, no, it's not really different. Every time I've been in Galicia in the winter time, it's like the UK. Anyway, yeah, it was it looks all right at the start of this game. By the way, the final score was Ourense 4, Unionistas 3. It was absolutely cracker. I'm feeling quite smug this week, Nick, because I had a couple of absolute storming games in my picks of the week after a miserable week the week before. This was an absolutely incredible game and pretty controversial as well. Amazingly, it was 0-0 at half time, but it should have been 1-0 to the visitors. This is the first big talking point. In fact, Unionistas, I don't generally like to see this kind of thing when clubs complain. They put out these comunicados, don't they, saying that they've been hard done by as far as refereeing is concerned, and sometimes complain to the relevant authorities. And Unionistas have done so about this game, and rightly so, I'm afraid, Nick. I mean, I don't, as I say, like to see it, but they should have been 1-0 up at half time. And this is a bizarre situation where Alan scores for them. It's given originally, and then, of course, with FES, it's checked. And they check it and find a non-existent handball. It's a handball by the Ourense defender, not by the Unionistas player. Now, I totally understand that mistake can be made in real time. You might miss it, and we might spot it on the TV cameras later on. But we've got FES, Nick. What on earth is going on here? It's absolutely bizarre. And then you look to the first Ourense goal. Again, the man on the touchline. I mean, the man on the touchline presumably flagged up a possible problem with that Aaron goal that never was. And then they've gone and looked at it, both of them presumably, and decided that he handled it when he clearly didn't. I mean, that's just appalling. I don't care how bad the camera angles are. It's completely unforgivable that could happen with FES, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the terminology we always look for is there daylight between the players? You could have driven a motorbike between those two, couldn't you, in terms of where their hands and their respective body parts were when it comes to this league. It's a bit of a howler, really, for FES, which we've seen our fair share of controversial decisions. I don't think we've necessarily seen something like this yet, though, have we? So it is quite weird. So I can see why Ourense would be, gesticulating and feel aggrieved by this goal. Ultimately, it didn't matter, because he would go on and get the win, wouldn't they? But this has got to be.
Well, it matters. Well, the Unionistas did go and get the win, did they? So absolutely did matter. They were. I mean, you could say, listen, the way this game panned out, we'll go fast forward to the end and then perhaps rewind a little bit. But yeah, they conceded 2 goals in the 99th and the 102nd minute at Unionistas to lose the game 4-3, having led 3-2. So you could say, well, listen, you were winning the game even if this goal had been given. Ultimately, you had the game in your pocket and you threw it away. But we can't forgive this. And what I find really difficult to understand as well is that the same fourth official that checked that particular goal and decided there was a handball, which there wasn't. Then on the first Ourense goal, it is handball. He practically catches it, the guy, before he scores, and this appears to be okay. Quite extraordinary. I mean, they got it completely wrong on both those decisions. Both of those decisions, I think, Unionistas have taken to the refereeing authorities and said, please explain to us how on earth these mistakes were made. I thought they also got a very soft penalty given against them, and that soft penalty led to a second yellow card for their teenage defender, Encuentro. I think it's on loan from Andorra. So they're then basically essentially at 2-2, and then they go back in front at 3-2 in the 96th minute. And again, there's a bit of talk there. I think some of the Ourense fans are saying there's a hand at the back of the defender. I'm not sure there's much contact there, but he loops ahead of his own keeper. So that's bizarre. So just a crazy, crazy game, Nick, overall. And it's a shame that, unfortunately, some really strange decisions by the officials in this one are what it'll be remembered for, because it was an incredible game and an incredible comeback from Ourense. You can't take it away from 3-2 down, even playing against 10 men. Tremendous to score 2 goals deep into added time, weren't they?
Yes, very much the embodiment of never say die, especially Ourense at the minute. Like you say, we would never have seen this coming, Liam. I may have jokingly throwing you under the bus in a group chat today, saying that you were calling for Danny Lether's head, whilst I was cool, calm, and collected, saying just wait for it to turn. The results will come. Obviously. Slightly tongue in cheek. I think it was definitely me saying, "How has he still got a job?" But I tell you what, they're being rewarded for staying by, and it'd be interesting to see, like I say, whether they can get into the next round of the Copa del Rey with the form they're showing, because they are well on their way. And as we've said, we've already spoken about how close these leagues are. Between, I think it was 6 points between the playoff places and the relegation spots in Grupo Uno. Before we know it, Ourense, who were rock bottom, dead and buried, like Unionistas, could be up there. We don't know, do we? But it's been very interesting to watch. Your next game, a fantastic game between two of this league's top sides, Racing Ferrol 2, Merida 2. More late drama.
Absolutely. This was one of the best games I've seen all season, not just in terms of drama, but also in terms of quality. I thought Merida was superb in the first half. And to be fair, I think Club de Ferrol were not far behind. The only problem for Merida was that they should have been ahead by the break. They were much the better side in the first half. I thought the penalty for I think Club de Ferrol put in front was very, very debatable. Scored early in the second half, so they went 1-0 up. It looked like they were going to hang on to that, and they didn't just hang on. To be fair, they attacked as well. It was pretty much an end-to-end second half, and then a bit of luck really for the visitors, and they kind of deserved it because, as I say, I thought the penalty that was given against them was a really poor decision, or very debatable, should we say, at the very least. It was another Álvaro Peña scored the penalty. Álvaro Mardones, who I think is on loan from Depor, scored an own goal for to benefit Merida. Of course, it was a cross from Artol. It wasn't going anywhere significant. Be deflected by his own keeper to make it 1-0. And then we had Álvaro García, the man himself, 10th goal of the season, absolute goal machine, as we've said before, putting Merida ahead in injury time. And then Álvaro Mardones came back and smashed in an equaliser at the 103rd minute. So yeah, three goals from Álvaro's, and three different Álvaro's. One of them scored at both ends, and overall just a tremendous game of football. And both of those sides, especially Merida, will be thinking after that one, we are really in this, promotion shake-up for me.
Yeah, this was a if we want to pick games to promote this league, to show the quality that that ourselves and our listeners are known to admire, this is a prime example, isn't it? Like, say, two top sides that can go head to head, that can knock lumps out of each other and have just fantastic players with quality beyond what we would expect to have at this level, especially. I think the only thing I take from this, Liam, is, and we've kind of pressed on it a few times, we look at some of the home form of those sides in and around the top end of both Grupo Uno and Grupo Dos. For me, Racing Ferrol just don't seem to have that imperious nature about themselves. And it's not because they're losing games at home, but they just can't seem to win that many at home. And we've spoken many a time about how, come the end of the season, that'll be, truly the difference between some of the top sides in these leagues. Is it going to be a worry in the long term for Pablo Lopez that he's not getting these kind of results at home, and that is when, Racing Ferrol might see themselves just missing out on the playoffs, for example?
Yeah, I think I have. I mean, even after this game, there's been some suggestions that there is some, some dissenting voices in terms of Pablo Lopez stewardship, and that can only come, as you say, Nick, from those own performances. And it does seem that the bar is set very high in this case. I suspect they have got a decent budget. Obviously, as we know at this level, there's no limite salarial. They can spend what they like. It does look like a fairly expensive squad if we look at it on paper. And maybe that's the problem, as you say, as we've said many times before, most of the games that you play, most of your fans that watch your games, watch the home games. You don't get somebody going to the away games. So, the majority of those are going to be judging you on your home performance. And I agree with you. I don't think they've been as convincing as they should be at home. I don't think in this game that they would be too upset with the draw, because I think overall Merida probably deserve to win. But yeah, the bar is the bar. They're expected to chase down Tenerife, and they expect to be closer to Tenerife than they are. And I suspect that harder can be to believe that he could be under pressure. I think he probably is. And it is purely, as you say, about what they've been doing in Amalata, which hasn't always been that convincing.
No, absolutely not. On to your final and third game of Grupo Uno, ultimately the one that cost Diego Nogales his job. And finally, a win for Cacereño away from home. It is a good result for the Extremadurian side, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's not exactly a derby. It's not a million miles between these two clubs. But yeah, a really good win overall. I thought they deserved it. Cesar Gomez scored earlier on, and he's not scored for them all season. That's been one of the biggest problems. They haven't managed to find a number 9 who can bang in the goals for them. They really are struggling in front of goal. And yeah, I think it was the first win in 6, wasn't it? But they totally deserved it. They had a little bit of luck in the first half. There was a shot from, I think it was Alex Roig, for I think he's the fullback at Talavera, shot and hit the inside of the post and rolled all the way along the goal line. And Di Renzo, who's their top scorer at Talavera, was coming at the far post. I don't quite know. It just eluded him. If he'd managed to get to it, it would have been a tap in from about 4 inches. So ultimately it was just a massive stroke of good fortune. But to be honest, overall, I thought he deserved it, and that was in the first half. And second half, I thought Cacereño really closed out the game really comfortably. I thought Talavera offered very, very little going forward, and 5 defeats in a row. And that's bye Nogales basically, and I get that because again they'd want to push on and at least consolidate their position in Primera RFEF, and initially it looked like very promising signs, but now they really have hit the skids, and so Nogales has been moved on.
Yeah, I was going to say, watching this back, we spoke about Ferrol and Merida being a great example of what the potential of this league is when you've got top clubs taking lumps out of each other. This is probably the opposite of that, Liam. I don't think it's anything to do with Talavera and Cacereño. When you are down there and you are getting those kind of results, you maybe are a bit more hesitant to play the football you want to play, but it wasn't the greatest 90 minutes of football you'll definitely catch this weekend. But great to see Cacereño getting a result finally, which I think it still keeps them in the relegation zone, but it is a good move in the right direction for them. Obviously, we'll see how Sandrone gets on as in charge of Talavera. His first game, he's in charge tomorrow night against Malaga. So, baptism of fire, but maybe from a selfish perspective, new manager bounce couldn't come at a worse time when I really want Malaga to go on a bit of a cup run, but we'll see how he gets on in that game. Shall we look at some Grupo Dos games?
Yep, let's go for it.
Absolutely. Friday night, under the lights in Grazia, New Sardinia. This is how Primera Federación football should be played, Liam. This was bouncing, wasn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. And hugely contributing to that were the Sabadell fans. We said before, it is a derby, really. Sabadell's not that far at all from Barcelona. And in fact, Sabadell is kind of northwest of Barcelona. Of course, Europa's ground is in the northern half of the city, so it's pretty close. But I think they brought about 600 or 700 fans, which was tremendous. And fair play to Europa as well for giving them that many tickets. We sometimes see with these kind of games that the home side sort of restrict the number of tickets, don't they, that they give to away fans, so that they can't have too much of an influence on the atmosphere. But they did give them the whole of one end, didn't they? A really decent turnout, a really decent response from the away side to that. And absolutely cracking, brilliant stuff. And I mean, I think end-to-end stuff that first half was really good watch. I think Sabadell was slightly the better side, weren't they? And to do that on at the North Sardinia, not too many sides can say that this season. But then second half, those boys did it again, didn't they? They came through and chalked up another hugely impressive victory.
They do, and they just seem to, especially on their own turf, which is why we keep saying it's so important that they maybe can stay there beyond January. They just seem to have an extra gear to them, Liam. And coming out in the beginning of that second half, you could just see that they'd had, I don't know if it's a bollocking or whether it's they've just had the cage rattled ever so slightly by thinking, we've just been showing up a little bit. But they came out, the opener coming through Khalid, a simple pullback cross, 6 yards out, tapping from a nice easy angle. But then even after that, Europa really started to show the dominance. They really started to turn the screw on their opponents. And again, Sabadell, who have ironically been better away from home than they have been at home this season. We've spoken about them being undefeated until the end of November, which again is an absolutely spectacular, bit of work from Ferran Costa and his side. But within 10 minutes of the first goal, Khalid would pop up again. This time with an even closer finish, Liam. This time from about 3 yards out. But it's just a simple side across. And when you've got players like Jordi Cano and Khalid doing this for you, who can stop Europa from doing this at home? It's literally going to be moving away. That is going to be the thing that impedes them, I think.
Well, it looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very hard to imagine they could create the same sort of atmosphere, the same sort of buzz around their team at an athletics track, which is open. It's not really going to have the same feel to it at all. So that's presumably why they're incredibly desperate to stay where they are, because they can see that they, in a Grupo Dos, that nobody really is absolutely outstanding in it. I suppose Atleti B have been very good so far, but you don't see so many teams that are standing out from the rest. And so, yeah, they've suddenly, from being a team that I'm sure started the season, they didn't make many signings in the summer, did they? They kept pretty much the same squad. And I think we questioned that at the time and we were concerned about the lack of Primera RFEF experience, but they've taken to it really well, especially on their own patch. And so, yeah, I think all of a sudden they're thinking, well, maybe we could get to the playoffs. Maybe we could push to get into professional football and achieve this dream that's lived on in Gracia for many, many years, since their glory days almost 100 years ago, wasn't it, really, I think? So, yeah, I don't know what they do, as you said earlier. I don't know what they do then. I'm fairly sure they wouldn't be allowed an artificial pitch in Segunda. But, yeah, it's a brilliant story. And, yeah, given how good Sabadell had been and how well they played in the first half, amazing how Europa came out and just absolutely bossed it in the second half and ended up totally deserving to win the game. So tremendous stuff from them.
Yes, 2-0 to Europa against Sabadell. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but moving on to Nastic to Hercules 2. The Beto Company era remains undefeated. It's only been 2 games, but still we will celebrate the small victories whenever we get them. Hard to believe, Liam, when you sent me this message the other day, I really did have to go and double check this. Not because I don't believe you, but I couldn't believe the fact that this is only Hercules' second point on the road this season. That really sums up the Torresia time in charge this season and why Hercules have really struggled, haven't they, so far on the road this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only point they got as well before this one was away at Antequera, who've not exactly had the greatest season either, So, yeah, it's not even close to being good enough to what's expected. It's very interesting as well, looking at the sort of talk around Hercules. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about reinforcements in January. There's a suggestion they've contacted Josep Caravera, who was at Castellón last season. He's at Tenerife at the moment, but not playing all that often for them. And it just shows the kind of clout that this club has and where they want to be headed. That they can even start to be linked with players like that before the transfer window opens, and yeah, I mean, this is a brilliant result, isn't it? I know Gimnastic Tarragona have not been at the level that they were at last year so far this season. They're certainly, as with Ponferradina, not got such a strong group of players as they had, but they still went 2-0 up in this game, didn't they? And yet Hercules, despite that really poor away form, came back and got a point.
Yeah, the home side flew into a 2-0 lead in that first half as well. Firstly, from a penalty from Juan Hardy, who's scored his 7th goal of the season there, which is excellent to see from the midfielder. I don't know if you saw him, but I think Bolo might have got a touch on his attacker there. I don't know if you saw this repeat on the FES. It's one might call it a shove. It's the clearest penalty. I think we're definitely going to check on FBS so far this season. But obviously a great finish from Hardy for the penalty. Paul Martinez, who, to be honest, when I saw him sign for Nastic at the beginning of the season, I was very much applauding this as a really good, correct move. He was very impressive with Unionistas in previous campaigns. This is his first goal. That surprised me really, Liam, because he's a really good finisher. Grabbed his first goal at the back post, a great move by Nastic, but then it kind of turned south for them. And this is where I think Nastic have been a bit of a problem to themselves all season. They do daft shit all the time. And this time it was Alex Jimenez, within the space of 5 minutes, got 2 yellow cards, both for tackles on Rentero. And then the swing went in Hercules' favour, didn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely daft from Jimenez. Wasn't having already picked up a bookie. You just can't make that sort of challenge. And as you rightly say, that completely changed the game. It meant that they were able to bring on Fran Sol, weren't they? Hercules. They had Slavi already on the pitch. You got those two up front playing against 10 men. Slavi did reduce the deficit, missed his penalty, but then scored the rebound. Yeah, I think. I mean, it just says a lot about where Hercules are about. And we said at the start of the season, didn't we? Slavi and Fran Sol as your front two. I mean, that's really, really quite strong for Primera RFEF. I feel even though Sol is perhaps a little bit past his best, those are two very, very good strikers to be playing up front for you. And they played together, as I say, in the second half in this one. So, yeah, I think that it's a great result, this one, away from home, as I say, with such a poor record up to now. Brilliant to come back and draw this one 2-2. Disappointing end for them, although I don't think this is a red card. Samuel Bathgate, I think he does make some contact. It is high, the contact, but it's after he misses the initial challenge, really. And I think it's a yellow, not a red for me. I don't think it should have been a red card. But yeah, disappointing for them, disappointing end for them. But overall, I think they'll be more than happy with a point in the Estadio No Tarragona, won't they?
Yes, absolutely, and excellent to see Slavy in somewhat of form. Liam. Obviously, he's been sort of like a bit part player here. Obviously, Beto Company is giving him the confidence to go and perform, and he was involved in everything that Hercules did going forward. So that is excellent to see. And you know, we've spoken with many sides about the importance of a dominating, aggressive, all-round number 9, and like I say, Beto Company is tapping into his. So I'm really looking forward to see how he gets on as we move in towards the second half of the season. My final game of the weekend was Real Murcia 2, Alcorcón 1. I tell you what, Liam, in the early knockings of this game, Alcorcón looked the more likely for me. You can tell that Vladis is back in his stride ever so slightly because he was at the heart of everything that Alcorcón did moving forward. He looked sharp. He looked up for it. He looked like he was maybe just a couple of inches from grabbing the lead for Alcorcón. And then completely against the run of play, some really tidy football from Real Murcia. So Juan Carlos played on the through ball and a really tidy finish. And this is just the epitome of what we call in this, Liam, Colungaból. Is that what we're going to say? Because it is just free for all, isn't it, under him at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lovely goal, but you're right, he came completely against the run of play. And I think Vladis, the problem with him, I mean, having seen him in the flesh the previous weekend against Tarazona, the problem is just simply to say that he's doing everything but score at the moment, isn't he? He looks a very, very good player, and we know he is a very good player, but he just doesn't seem to be able to put the ball back of the net last couple of games, and he's been outstanding. I mean, he has an assist for the goal last weekend, but this weekend just couldn't really make the most of the opportunities that came his way, most of which he created for himself, if I'm perfectly honest. Yeah, I mean, Ivan Perez had a bit of a mixed game, didn't he? He scored in the wrong net and then he scored in the right net, but the right net goal came a little bit too late for Alcorcón to do anything about it. And yeah, I mean, incredible when you look at this, where Real Murcia were when Colunga took over, and again, an indication just how tight this league is. All of a sudden, they're in the top 5, aren't they, of Grupo Dos, where they need to be in terms of expectations, and now pushing on from there. Looks like it might well be a challenge eventually for automatic promotion. The honeymoon period has gone on for quite a while now, and you start to think, well, maybe this isn't just a honeymoon period. Maybe this really is the start of something quite special at Real Murcia.
It is Colungaból. That's what I'm going to go with. That's going to be the name of the podcast this week, Liam. It's going to be Colungaból. I'm going to make sure that we get it trending on Primera RFEF circles, because it is fantastic to see, because, like you say, Alcorcón would throw the kitchen sink at times at Real Murcia, but they would calmly be able to defend. Like I say, something which they didn't have under the previous manager. But more importantly, they know how to attack directly. And this time, Flacco's providing rather than scoring. But they just seem to have gelled all of a sudden, and it's all come from this manager who's just changed things up and doing the simple things right. So yeah, very much for him, very much see how he gets on, and he's completely turned their fortunes around. One side whose fortunes simply will not turn around, Liam. I think they are now 10 points off, maybe 8 points off the pace now at the bottom of Grupo Dos. Betis Deportivo. It was they lost this weekend 1-0 against Cartagena. The home side wretched form continues. Just one win all season. As you said here, 10 points just to confirm from safety. Cartagena, good for this game. I don't think they really looked like they were too troubled by Javi Medina's side at all, were they?
Not really, no. It's incredible. Again, a stat that I only really noticed this week was that, they didn't score away from home, Cartagena, until their 6th away game. I think they drew the first 4-0 nil. Then they got stuffed by Atlético San Luqueño. And now they scored, I think, 2, didn't they, against Teruel a few weeks ago. And now in this next game, they've also won. So back-to-back victories. The home form's pretty strong. A little bit like Tenerife and Grupo Uno, although not quite so as effective. They're just quietly going about the business, aren't they? And not really drawing many plaudits, but they expect them to be up there, challenging for automatic promotion. And certainly, if they can sort their way form out, they'll be a very, very strong contender for that championship, won't they?
Yes, absolutely. Javier just kind of getting on with the business of being a manager at the moment, which is very good to see. Real Madrid Castilla 2, Baracaldo 1. Inamel de la Soto's boys played quite well in this, Liam, I thought, but they were just, maybe edged out by the big boys of Real Madrid Castilla. I suppose their biggest concern would be, and I know this is a concern because there is not too many times I get a text from you, Liam, that genuinely reads with distress. And that was San Bartolome going off injured. I could feel it through the phone, Liam. That's all I'm going to say. Looking like a bit of a muscle injury, isn't it?
Yeah, it was upsetting, I have to say. I mean, it looked like one of those ones he goes down and he instantly signals to go off. And yet when you see that, you just think, yeah, the player knows that he's done something here that isn't just a bruise or a twinge, it looks bad. And I do hope he's all right. And he's massively important to them, of course, isn't he? They're a very good side, Balacalda, but San Bartolome provides that X factor. So fingers crossed from his perspective that his recovery is swift. So that one was won by the Filial, and then another win for a Filial in the next game of the weekend. Bilbao Athletic 2, Lugo 0, and that's 4 wins in a row for Bilbao's Athletic Club's B team, and they've moved into the playoffs as well. And Lugo just still can't win on the road, can they? They just cannot get a victory away from the Anchocano.
It's going to be a massive concern for Iago Iglesias. The fact that they are so good at home as well. Let's not forget, give them credit where credit is due. I think they're unbeaten at the Ancho Caro as well, but they just can't seem to transfer that form into an away match. And you think opportunities against like Filiales, like Bilbao Athletic, even though they have won wins in a row, they should be the games that you go into thinking, right, we're going to absolutely put this hoodoo to bed here, but it's just not worked out for Lugo. And as you say, Liam, with this result, I think it's 3 Filiales in the top 5 of Grupo Uno, which is not what we want to see come the end of the season at all, is it? So yeah, well, hopefully that will change around soon. Great news down in Sanlúcar, Liam. The rot has well and truly been stopped. I know this may hurt you ever so slightly, though, with who it was against. Atlético Sanluqueño 2, Tarazona 1, and you win at last for the home side after 8 games without one. It is a long way for Tarazona to go, though. This is really sort of the issues that we start to look at when it comes to Tarazona being sort of like the odd one out in Grupo dos, certainly in terms of where the location is. Do you reckon that kind of fed into the reasons why they struggled here?
Well, it has to, doesn't it? I mean, they have to go to Seville twice as well, don't they, to play the Filiales down there. I mean, I think they won actually against Sevilla Atletico. So it's not like they haven't won in Andalusia, but it's such a long way to go. And, you can, as I said before, you can guarantee they're not flying on chartered flights, are they? So, ultimately, yeah, it's a shame that has come about like that. I think in terms of this game, I think José a bit disappointed. He got beaten twice at the near post. I think always it keeps get beaten at the near post. It tends to be something that they look at as being a bit disappointing. And at the other end, we had Ruben Dominguez, who is on loan from Mirandilla, which is Cadiz's filial. It was his debut, and he made a hash, I thought, the Tarazona goal, which I felt a bit sorry for him about. He's only 20. And then he made a couple of decent saves later on, so ultimately he kind of redeemed himself. And yeah, good to see Atletico Sanluqueño stop the rot, but I would have preferred that they hadn't done it against Tarazona, yeah.
No, absolutely. But like you say, slight positives maybe. And maybe the goalkeeper is one of the reasons why that result came about in terms of just changing the confidence behind the back line. Who knows? One team that isn't shy on confidence, again, a team that really is shy on confidence, is Tenerife 1, Arenteiro 0, top versus bottom in Grupo Uno. But it didn't look like that for much of the game, did it, Liam? It looked a bit more comfortable between these two sides. You couldn't tell that there was the best part of 19 places between them, could you?
No, you couldn't at all. I mean, I know that Tenerife went ahead in the first half. I think it was Fabricio and the Brazilian midfielder who had them in front, and quite comfortable after that. I thought it was going to be for them. I thought they were going to go and win it, 3 or 4-0, but it didn't. And there were some quite nervy moments. I don't think Alan Taylor really created anything that you could call a real massive goal-scoring opportunity in that second half, but they pressed really well. In the search for an equaliser, and yeah, there was certainly some tension in the stadium about that particular second half. So yeah, they got it done again, Tenerife. But I think that they would have expected, to win that game more comfortably from an Alan Taylor point of view. Clearly, although they are still bottom, it would encourage them greatly to see that they pushed, the standout team in Grupo Uno really hard, and maybe they can take that back to their home pitch, and all the other teams they'll play who won't be the same caliber of opposition as Tenerife and build on it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, with Arentero, Jorge Zueta has got to really sort of like get his ideas into them. And I tell you what, if you can get Mingo firing once again, and Arenteiro won't be too far off posting some results soon either. Up back into Galicia, Pontevedra 1, Deportivo Guadalajara 1. Still no Danny Selma for Pontevedra. Obviously, he was omitted for the squad over penalty gate, Liam. But the visitors took the lead in this one. It's now 2-4 for David Amigo. But young Portuguese forward equalised before the break, didn't he?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This I find these kind of connections between Portugal and Spain and people teams filiales and stuff really fascinating. And João Resende is on loan from Estrela da Amadora, who are actually Primera Liga sides. They're in the top flight in Portugal, but he's only just got there and is one of these. I think they signed him as one to watch for the future, and then put him out on loan straight away. But he came up through the Benfica Academy and he was there for a good few years. So he's clearly got quality. I think he's got a couple of goals now as well. I mean, 2 and 4 for David Amigo is not exactly amazing, is it? But you've got to remember that, they don't score many goals at the moment, Guadalajara, and they have been missing hugely Salifo. And so that was perhaps the best news of the afternoon for them, was that he reappeared in the second half. He's been out for more than a month and he is a standout player for them up front. But, unfortunately, the bottom line is, although it's a decent point away at Pontevedra, they haven't won the league since match day 4. So after that really promising start, I think the last game they won was that really impressive victory in Ponferrada, and since then they just haven't been able to get a win. And so, of course, they stay in the relegation zone, which is a great shame because they do have a thin squad, but we'd certainly hope that they were doing an awful lot better than where they are at the moment.
Yes, good to see Salifo back, and hopefully they can start to climb back up the table, aim to, if anything, selfishly, return credit to my name, because I obviously did, pump them as outsiders for the playoff picture. We're certainly not looking that way at the moment, but I do have every hope that, there's still a lot of football to play. Another team we put into the playoffs, into our little early season prediction, was Marbella. Obviously, new manager David Movia taking over recently, but they've gone down here 1-0 to Sevilla Atletico de Estadio Jesus Navas. Briefest highlights of the week, Liam, we're saying here, the new winner, 1 minute 22 seconds of our time to spend on this game. Not a classic.
That 17 seconds of that was the teams walking out at the start. So it was literally just over a minute. It was absolutely incredible. It was like one shot at each end, I think, and then a goal. And then, quite interestingly, I didn't watch the, because Sevilla, of course, one of the teams that produced more substantial highlights for their filiale, so you can also watch the take on it from the club as well as from the league. But I didn't go down that road. But I did find it quite amusing that I saw in the description of those highlights that they described it as a golazo that won this game. It wasn't a golazo, Nick. It wasn't. I thought Manu Garcia in the Marbella goal should have saved it. It's a decent effort from a long way out. It was going in the corner, but he gets down to it and it just kind of goes through his hands. So yeah, that was kind of in keeping with the rest of the game. Really one to forget. Never mind the briefest highlights of the weekend. I think it's the briefest highlights of the season, beating that Real Murcia Teruel record by more than 30 seconds. So yeah, I'm not sure we'll ever get under a minute, but this it's been pretty close to it. And you've just mentioned Mobile, of course. He was really impressive at both Sabadell and Zamora over the last couple of seasons, bringing them from Segunda Ref to Primera Ref. But he's had 2 games now at Marbella, no points, no goals. They're next to bottom. They're 7 points from safety. So yeah, he's got a big job on there, hasn't he?
I continue to scratch my head with this Marbella side, both last season and this season. I just don't understand how they can sign the players that they've got and cannot be posting results week in, week out, because, like I say, squad-wise, they are hench is the word I'm going to use. Another surprise result here, Ponferradina 1, Arenas de Getxo 2. We've spoken about how good Arenas Club are at home. Away-wise, they picked up their first point last weekend, I think it was, against Real Aviles Industrial, I want to say. And now a win to back that up. Not great if you're viewing from the new manager perspective, is it, Liam?
Not at all. No, we did say earlier on, we thought that NAFTA's got a big job, not just to get the team sorted, but also to get the support of all of the fan base, because I think quite a few thought Esteve was a bit unlucky to lose his job. Really pleased to see Alex Hidalgo score the winner here, a player who I saw in the flesh a couple of months ago, and I thought it was tremendous So although this wasn't the hardest goal they'd ever scored, it was worth a lot. 3 minutes of time, it was the winner. And yeah, good to see them now out of the bottom 5 at Ennis to get up, but that actually pushes Ponferrada into the bottom 5. Now we know how tight Grupo Uno is in the middle of the table, and you can very quickly move from being in the playoffs to being in the bottom 5. But yeah, that's not psychologically a good place for them to be, is it? Eldense 1, Antequera 3. This for me, I don't know what you think, Nick. I think this is the biggest surprise of the match day, to be honest, in either Grupo.
Yeah, no, I'd 100% agree on this. They had the duo in charge. Obviously, Abraham Paz was announced on Sunday evening, I think it was. So obviously they took charge of this game on a temporary measure. Claudio Barajan had been unbeaten since taking over Eldense, unbeaten in 4, I think it was. But Antequera just looked fresh in this. It looked like they'd have the shackles taken off them. And to go away to Elda and score 3 goals is no mean feat. And yeah, they looked fantastic for this, didn't they?
They did, yeah. I like the look of Basile. I've seen him a couple of times before and been impressed with him, and then he's kind of disappeared a little bit into the background. And he's come up from Segunda RF with Melilla, he was with last season. First goal was absolutely pinged it in the corner. Second one didn't hit quite so well, but it was also from outside the area. So 2 goals from outside the area. You don't get that very often in Primera RFEF, do you? In fact, at any level, I thought you don't tend to see a player score 2 goals from more than 20 yards out. So impressive from him. They're still in the bottom 5, but big win here. Talking of big wins, a back-to-back win this one is, isn't it, for Zamora 3-1 at Osasuna Promesas?
Yes, I think Oscar Cano might be able to eclipse his 5-game stint at Tenerife last season, but this is a fantastic win from Zamora, who, again, are starting to make moves in the right direction, looking more like the squad we thought they were going to be. And, this was game over by 49 minutes into the game, Liam, 3-0 up away at Tahona, I think it is the way to say
Tahona,
it.
Yeah.
Tahona.
I have to say, I always find it's incredibly underwhelming, that stadium. I've said it many times before. It's not just because I hate for the honest. I did see a brief glimpse of the main stand, which you never get, of course, because the camera angle was always on the building. It was actually pretty full. I was like, okay, so people do go and watch. It just feels completely underwhelming given the camera angle. They might want to switch the camera angle there and perhaps have it pointing towards what looked like a pretty full, one side of the ground, basically. I mean, they only sit on one side of the ground, don't they? There's nothing on 3 sides of the ground, but it looked a lot better than they did. But yeah, tremendous display from Zamora for the first, 49 minutes. I mean, it was 3-0 by then, and they had they should have had more, to be honest. I mean, there's this Greek keeper, Dimitrios Stamatakis for Osasuna Promesas, who was brilliant in this game. It could have been 5 or 6 without him. So yeah, a comfortable victory overall, well deserved, and Cano, as you say, it looks like he might last more than 5 games this time. And the only disappointment, I suppose, was Atuman, the centre half, being sent off late on. Games already done and dusted, really, and he's a really decent centre half, and of course he'll now miss this weekend. But yeah, overall, really good win. A really good win also for a team that we don't like to see win on the road, and that is, of course, Villarreal B, especially when they win in Torremolinos.
Yes, a rare day off at El Pozuelo for Torremolinos. Can't really put this down to anything other than they just couldn't really keep up with Villarreal for me. The end of the game with 10 men as well, with Camacho being sent off, who's going to be a big miss for them in the next game, especially. And the visitors could even afford to miss a penalty in this one, Liam, as they go just outside the top 5 in Grupo 2. Let's not focus on their win, though. Let's focus on a man who has been waiting for a win for a little while. He is the former Villarreal B coach Miguel Alvarez, and it was Ibiza 3, Algeciras 0. This is a fantastic win, and I'm going to say it, he's a friend of the pod. A first goal for Frank Castillo.
Yeah, what a beauty as well for your first goal, eh? Absolutely stunning. I think it's the best goal I saw all weekend. It just falls to him, a little ricochet or something. He's just inside the box, curls in the corner. Fantastic. He hasn't played that many games. I think he must have been injured because he's only played, I think, 6 games so far this season. Yeah, beautiful finish from him. And Sofiane also scored. He scored a lot of goals on loan last season at Atlético Sanluqueño from, I think it was at Ceuta, wasn't he? Signed,
Ceuta, yeah.
It was a really decent signing for Ibiza in the summertime. Hasn't scored. So you've got 2 players there who were big signings in the summer, both scored in the same game. Maybe this could be the turning point. And because let's not forget, although they've been on this poor run in terms of wins, they have kept 4 clean sheets in the last 5 games, Nick. So you know what? If they can start scoring goals, then maybe Miguel Alvarez will be thinking a bit more confidently about, perhaps being very much in the playoff picture, which is what Ibiza should be with the squad they've got.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think they've got Sabadell away coming up this weekend, so we'll see whether they can build on that fantastic result against what has been a pretty decent Aldethia side so far this season. Up in Asturias, Real Aviles Industrial 1, Salta Fortuna 2 is having a filial as the challengers to Tenerife better than nobody. Liam, I'm not too sure how I feel about this, but
No,
maybe.
I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? I don't want Tenerife to run away with it, but I really don't want their closest challenge to be Celta Fortuna. But what can we do? They won this one in the 90th minute as well, which I really hate. I don't like to see filiales ever win, but when they get one right at the end like this, I didn't like it. I would have liked a 1-1 here, even if it meant that Tenerife's gap was bigger in terms of their lead at the top. We did have an absolutely stunning goal. We can't even, regardless of replays, we can't ignore this goal from Hugo Gonzalez, which you might say the keeper could do better on, but my word, he smashes this in from way out on the left-hand side, doesn't he? He is some player, Gonzalez. He really, I can't see him not playing for Celta's first team at some point.
Well, you look at the fortunes of Celta Vigo, the first team this season, and you've got to be scratching your head, Liam, and thinking why isn't he already in that picture playing for them? Because they could really do with someone who can turn in a free kick like this. Obviously, strange as well from a Real Aviles Industrial perspective, they're having to play in their away kit for this match, which must be quite unusual. It was deemed that it was too similar to Celta Fortuna's kit. But it's just 1 point out the last 9 available.
I suppose Celta Fortuna wouldn't bring a second kit, but it just seems a bit shabby, doesn't it? Really, surely somebody thought about it and went, maybe the referee was being pernickety. I mean, I don't think Celta's kit is that much like Real Aviles' kit, but yeah, he said they couldn't wear the home kit, so they're playing away kit, which is a bit strange, as you say. Danny Vidal's team a little bit on the slide, aren't they? Unfortunately, but not really unexpected. I mean, 1 point from the last 9, but we wouldn't expect them to be in the top 5, and they're not now anymore. Sadly, the sadder thing for me is that, as we mentioned earlier on, Bilbao Athletic have taken their place in the top 5, which we could certainly do without in this rather filial-dominated Grupo Uno that we're looking at the moment.
Yes, and it wasn't great news for us filial haters even more. I don't know if you saw, Liam, actually, just as a bit of a tangent. Apparently, Real Madrid Castilla are playing at Goodison Park on Wednesday night. One of our listeners shared that into the Discord the other day. I'm quite tempted to go just to boo them for 90 minutes. I've got no interest in Everton. I've just got more interested of telling Lorenz Zuniga that he's a traitor. However, Atleti Bay, who are top of Grupo Dos, they won quite comfortably against Teruel on Sunday night in the last game of the weekend, 3-0 to the home side. Quite routine for Fernando Torres' men. Teruel had a goal harshly ruled out for our side in the first half, and they did do quite well. To be fair, the away form isn't their, isn't their finest part of their game. Home dominance is where Teruel have been successful this season, but yeah, Athletic Bay just looked like they could do this all day, couldn't they?
Well, I don't know. I disagree. I think the first half, Teruel were really unlucky. As you mentioned, that goal disallowed, I don't think should be disallowed. It's one of those ones where the guy who's given offside isn't really for me interfering with play, but they might say he ran across the eye line of the keeper. I don't know what they came up with for this, but I wouldn't have disallowed it. I thought it was a perfectly fair goal. And they also disallowed a goal for Teddy later on, which is completely unforgivable. But yeah, the game was over by that point. I think, once they hadn't scored in the first half, when I thought Teruel were the better side, it was ominous, wasn't it? And in 20 minutes in the second half, basically Athletic Bay won the game after the interval. So they're looking ominously strong, and that is not good news for people like ourselves. But what can you do? This weekend, your 3 games from Grupo Uno, got a bit to live up to.
Yes, I have. And in fact, I usually look to try and spread my football across the weekend, Liam, but I come with you with a Christmas gift. Obviously, we are on the 2nd of December when we are recording, so we are getting festive, ready for a Feliz Navidad. So I'm going to give you a Super Sunday. I don't know what the Spanish equivalent of that would be. What is a Super Domingo?
Yeah.
Super Domingo. So get yourself plenty of snacks and sustenance and beers and cerveza, whatever it might be, for this Sunday. Starting at 12 o'clock Spanish time, Merida against Ourense at the Estadio Romano. That is a great game between two sides which have been in great form recently. And as we've already mentioned, Merida are cracking to watch with Alvaro Garcia leading the way. Then at 6:15 in the evening, so a bit of a gap, but there's plenty of other football to watch. I'm sure Liam will provide something for you. Baracaldo against Real Aviles Vélez Industrial in the Basque Country. Should be a fantastic game. And then at 8:30 in the evening, Lugo versus Tenerife. The Ancho Caro being a fortress for the home side. Tenerife tending to be quite the team that goes to away sides and dominates if they can. I think that's going to be a really, really tasty game between two really good sides there, Liam. What about Grupo 2? Have we got? Is it a Super Domingo for you as well, or have you?
It's not Super Domingo. I've got 3 games over 3 days, but I have got a little game, a little cracker actually for that gap that you're looking at there between about 2 o'clock and about 6:15. First though, Marbella against Atlético San Luqueño. Yeah, it's not necessarily going to be a classic, but it's a massive game for both teams. I think, Marbella, the first 2 games were tough, both away from home, weren't they? I think, and now he's at home, and he's got to make it happen here, hasn't he? He's got to basically pull off a good result here. Actually, were they home first game? Actually, they've lost both games 1-0 anyway, and I think Sevilla Atletico, and that's not the end of the world to lose that game. And I suppose losing away from home again, also not terrible. But yeah, you've got to put away Atlético San Luqueño at home. I think that game for the gap on Sunday is Sabadell against Ibiza, 4 p.m. on Sunday. That one is perfect. Should be a cracker. You mentioned it above, and that really will be a really good game. Obviously, Sabadell tasted the first defeat, but they are very strong at home in terms of not conceding goals, even if they don't score many. So it'd be interesting to see if the Ibiza free scoring exploits continue. And then last of all, on Monday, of course, Monday's a holiday in Spain. So there's a 6:15 kickoff on Mondays, a 6:30 kickoff was one, I think. And this is Cartagena against Real Murcia, the other one I've picked out. And that should be a really good game. These 2 teams really don't like each other. They're very close to each other. One of the closest derbies that we get in Primera RFEF. So yeah, that'll be tasty. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, El Gran Derbi de Murcia, or is it not quite that levels?
I don't know, but it's a really, really, as I say, we've got this strange situation where essentially most people think that the same bloke owns both clubs. So yeah, it's got an awful lot of intrigue, this one. Very, very interesting to see what happens in it. And yeah, even if it isn't a classic in terms of a 6-goal thriller, there'll be plenty on this. There'll be plenty of tackles flying in, I suspect.
Absolutely perfect. That's what we want to see. As we have got 4 days of Primera Federación football next weekend, Liam, and I know we're going to enjoy every single minute of it. So I will say thank you to you for joining me once again this evening to talk about Jornada 14.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
As always, and we'll say gracias to you at home. Please go like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Give us a follow on YouTube if you can do, or if you are a Spanish Segunda Patreon, make sure to give it a like through there as well. But as always, we'll see you again this time next week here on El Pozo. Hasta luego.